Oh, look, more questions. I love questions. Well, I love good questions, not the crap that we see so often from the religious, but these certainly seem to be genuine. What a surprise. So let's keep at it. Today, we're going to finish off that list of 56 questions that we started last week. There's a lot of them, but so far at least, I do think that they're pretty genuine. There are the standard problems where the religious have absolutely no grasp on the real world, but we'll address that when we come to it. For now, if you're amenable, let's get right back to the list where we left off last time. Do you reject all religions or just Christianity? Well, by definition, atheists reject all God claims, not just yours. This is just another indication that whoever wrote these questions, they don't have a clue. And I find that to be incredibly common. Well, you hate Christians because you're an atheist. Yeah, that's not how that works, is it? As though we embrace all the other religious traditions out there, we just hate yours. That is not how any of this works, but judging by the way these people think, if you can use that word, it's not very surprising. Do you believe in a higher power or a spiritual force? Nope. Unsupported beliefs are, by definition, unsupported, and I don't accept unsupported things. I expect there to be verifiable evidence, and when it comes to religion, there simply isn't any. I also apply that to things like Bigfoot, alien abductions, the Loch Ness Monster, and honest politicians. So far as we can tell, none of those things actually exist, and thus, none of those things should ever be accepted as true. Do you believe that morality is objective or subjective? Morality is entirely subjective. This becomes an emotional problem for a lot of people, even some atheists. Well, I want there to be a universal standard. Wah. Okay, too bad. What you want doesn't matter. What is actually real does. People who argue for objective moral standards always do so from a fallacious position. If there was an objective moral standard out there, then what we see in the real world, that isn't what we should see. It's why the religious just make up a bunch of bald rationalizations to explain away all the problems on their side. But man has an inherently sinful nature. That's why they're not all doing what we want them to do. Yeah, but prove that any of that is true without looking in your big book of multiple choice. They can't. It's just laughably sad. What do you think about the fact that so many people throughout history have believed in God? I don't know. What do you think about the fact that so many people throughout history believed the earth was flat? People can be, and demonstrably are, wrong about a great many things. What's really being asserted here is a logical fallacy, the appeal to popularity. It doesn't matter how many people believe a thing. That doesn't make that thing true. We know that people are largely dumb. They always have been, and sadly, they probably always will be. That they embrace things that are not defensibly true for entirely emotional reasons, that doesn't mean anything, but that people have some big problems reasoning. It doesn't make any of those unevidenced claims so. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing? You know, I get really sick and tired of this one. Nobody says that. I mean, nobody except the religious. That is their entire shtick. Magic Man in the sky went poof and the universe was there. Science doesn't say any of that. There is no nothing in reality. Nothing can't even exist in reality. Nobody says this but you. Every time the religious yank this pathetic nugget out of their backsides, it just makes them look stupid. Stupider. They are projecting their own mythology onto others. Nobody says this but you morons. Rent a clue and stop looking dumb. Nuff said. How do you explain the existence of consciousness? Consciousness is an emergent property of the physical brain. How do we prove that? Well, if you mess with the brain, you change consciousness. Brain damage changes the individual's personality. When the brain stops working, the individual's consciousness simply ceases to exist. This is a no-brainer. See what I did there? Anyway, never mind. This is yet another case of what people want to be true, not jiving with what is demonstrably true. Lots of people really want to feel special. They want to believe that they're more than that 3-pound lump of meat in their head. But that's just not the case. This is it. This is you. That's all that you are. It's all you will ever be. Your feelings just don't matter. What do you believe? Well, I believe lots of things. None of it has anything at all to do with atheism, so I'm just not going to go into it. This is another problem that I tend to see a lot from the religious. They try to tie absolutely everything to their religion. Their faith colors absolutely everything else. People try to tie their politics to their religions. I've seen people tie their favorite colors to their religions. Lots of people are really uncomfortable unless they have a single overarching belief that controls everything else. It's just that reality doesn't actually work that way. Not that most of these people seem to care. Do you believe that science and religion are compatible? No, absolutely not. In fact, based on the way that both operate, they are directly incompatible. Science works by observation, testing, and repeated confirmation. Religion operates by taking what you want to be true and insisting that it is. Hebrews 11:1 spells it out perfectly. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is entirely incompatible with science. It's also entirely incompatible with reality, which science studies. Maybe you lunatics need to knock it off. What do you think is the most important thing to focus on in life? Life. I mean, really, just live the only life that you actually know that you have. If you waste it, then what are you going to have in the end? I know what you wish that you'd get, but that's not defensible in any way, shape, or form. It's just wishful thinking. That doesn't mean anything. Unfortunately, the religious are more concerned with their wishes and their dreams than they are with the demonstrable reality that they actually live in, which makes most of their desires entirely pointless. You get to decide what is important to you, not some silly book or imaginary man in the sky. Make a good choice. What do you think is the best way to live one's life? I don't know that there is a single answer to that question. I mean, live it the way that you want to, understanding that actions, as always, have consequences. So long as you're not hurting anyone else, I really don't care. And I mean demonstrably harming others. Magical thinking is always harmful to yourself and to those around you, which is why I oppose religion so strongly. If you can do good by others, great. If you can at least not do anything to harm them, that's fine too. If you run around making a pest of yourself and telling people lies, that's another thing entirely. The religious really ought to knock that one off. How do you respond to the argument that atheism is just another form of religion? It's stupid because it doesn't fit into any definition of the term religion at all. So let's look at a couple of examples. Religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. Well, that certainly doesn't describe atheism at all, does it? Okay, how about this one? Religion is a particular system of faith and worship. Well, atheists have no faith and they sure don't worship anything, so that's 2 down. Even if you go with the least religious definition that I've been able to find, being pursuit or interest in which someone ascribes supreme importance, that doesn't even fit because I don't pursue atheism, and I certainly don't think it's important. If religion went away tomorrow and there were no more faith mongers in the world, I would never think about atheism ever again. It would be entirely irrelevant. So no, atheism isn't a religion. That's just a lie that the religious tell themselves so they can believe that everybody else is just like them. What do you think is the most convincing evidence for atheism? There is no evidence for atheism because atheism isn't a positive claim. I get so tired of having to explain this to these religious numbnuts. Atheism is, I don't believe you. That's it. Now, I had someone a couple of days ago say, well, I'm an atheist and I positively believe no gods exist. Don't try to erase me. Yeah, fuck off. You're doing intelligence wrong. This is not how any of this works. You cannot provide evidence against gods, thus having a positive position that gods do not exist is not rational. The moment that you have a positive position on anything, you incur a burden of proof to show that that position is true. I mean, you can certainly say that you have no good reason to believe that they exist. That's what I do. But the second that you take that positive position, you have the burden of proof to back it up. And these people can't do it. They can rationalize, like we see the religious doing, but they can't really present any actual evidence. It just proves that atheists aren't necessarily smart, as sad as that is. What do you think is the most convincing evidence against atheism? Again, clearly you don't know what the hell you're talking about. The only possible evidence against atheism would be positive proof that any gods actually exist. And good luck coming up with that. The only way to prove atheism is wrong is to prove theism is right. That's what we've been asking of the religious forever, isn't it? Sadly, that proof has not been forthcoming. Wonder why. What do you think about the problem of evil? Well, it's a problem for the religious, but not as a lot of people seem to think. I figure that the problem of evil is more damning against the Christian claimed characteristics of God than against the actual existence of God, which, let's be honest, has never been justified in the first place. All of the omni properties are just arbitrarily attached, and that's where the problem arises. If God wasn't omnipotent or omnibenevolent, then the problem of evil would just go away. It's only because they insist, for no good defensible reason whatsoever, that God just has to have all these characteristics, that the problem of evil remains a weight around their necks. I just find it another reason why gods are so laughably absurd, and clearly just something that people made up. What do you think about the idea of a secular society? Personally, I like the idea. Now, granted, it's not going to solve all of the problems. I doubt that anything would. Dumb people are still going to be dumb, God beliefs or not. This isn't going to be a single solution to all the world's issues, but at least it's a good start before we get working on all the others. At least if people aren't voting for their imaginary friends and actively hating other people because it says so in an ancient book of mythology, I figure we're probably going to be off to a more positive start. Then we can try to get down to the real nitty-gritty. And that's why the subtitle on my channel is not exposing Christianity wherever it hides. It's exposing stupidity wherever it hides. Because you don't have to be religious to be stupid. Although, I guess it helps. Do you think religion is harmful to society? Why or why not? Yes, absolutely it is. All magical thinking is. Anything that encourages people to think in ways counter to rationality, evidence, and intellectualism is, at least potentially, hazardous to society at large, and that's exactly what religion does. Granted, some very liberal theists are probably fine, because I don't think they take their religious beliefs very seriously to begin with. They believe because somebody told them that they should. They believe because they think it makes them look good to the neighbors. But their religion is little more than an afterthought. Those aren't the people that are banging on your door and insisting that you join their church. Those aren't the people getting on TV and saying you have to do what they say, otherwise God is going to smite them. The liberals and the moderates are also the first people out the door when being religious stops being convenient. In fact, that's really what we're seeing today. Christianity is dying, and it's the liberal and the moderate Christians who are giving up the ghost, leaving behind all the real fanatics who are causing all the problems. This is just the last hurrah of fundamentalist Christianity that we're likely to ever see. Luckily, most of them are old and not long for this world. It's not going to last for that long, and I think that's a good thing. What do you think is the most important thing to teach children about atheism? Again, atheism isn't a thing. It's a lack of a thing. The only thing that we need to teach anybody about atheism is that not believing unsupported nonsense is okay. That's not really atheism, that's skepticism, and we do need to teach people how to be skeptical of unsupported garbage that people believe, only out of faith and fee-fees. Everyone ought to be skeptical, and not just about religion, but about everything. It's very clear that there are plenty of bad ideas, unsupported beliefs, and childish emotional nonsense that people buy into these days beyond the realm of religion. And all of that needs to go away. Every last bit of it. Now, for anybody who's read my blog for the last couple of months, you'll know that I've done a long, unofficial series of articles that show that the far-right political religious idiots and the far-left political idiots, they're both doing the exact same thing for the exact same reason. And you'll get a case of one side, and both of them do it, that will point to the other side and scream, well, they're just doing this. But if you look at it, they're also doing that for the same reasons. This has absolutely nothing at all to do with being right, because they're both equally wrong. And it takes a load of healthy skepticism to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, I see what you did there. And most people in the extremes can't do that. How do you deal with the feeling of being alone in your beliefs without a community of like-minded people to support you? Where did you get the idea that's true? Atheism is the fastest growing quasi-religious demographic out there. Of course, I have no idea when this questionnaire was written, so I can't really hold it too much against them. Honestly, this entire thing looks like someone who can't be bothered to do any basic research before they start asking questions. And we see that a lot, sadly. Not just in religion, but it certainly doesn't make this any better. I see it a lot online these days, people who have made no effort of any kind to learn about, well, anything. They're just using real live people online as their own personal Google because they're just lazy. And I get really, really tired of lazy people. You all ought to knock that off. But to get back to your question, how do I deal with feeling alone? I don't feel alone. And even if I was alone, I wouldn't care because I am self-sufficient. I don't need a whole bunch of stupid yes men running around telling me how great I am or how wonderful my beliefs are. It's sad that a lot of people do need that, but I'm not one of them. I don't need like-minded people to support me, at least not when it comes to atheism, because atheism isn't really a thing. I have a lot of other interests that have absolutely nothing to do with atheism, and the people that share those interests, they support me. And this is another problem, like I said earlier, about wrapping your entire life around a single overriding belief system, because that's just dumb. What do you think are the most pressing ethical issues facing humanity today? Well, I don't really think this is an atheist question. There are plenty, of course, but not that has anything directly to do with atheism. I think the complete lack of any honesty out there is a big one, especially when it comes to politics. People are just willing to lie to your face if they think it might get them votes or money or support. And, of course, going back to the last question, people are just too stupid to check out the claims being made, and they just sign on the dotted line based entirely on how the claims feel. Not whether they're true, not whether they've been checked out, because nobody actually cares about any of that, but if it gives them a dopamine hit in the head. And I suppose religion has been doing that forever too. Like I said, way back when, somewhere in this list of questions, I don't really remember where, just being an atheist doesn't make you a skeptic. It doesn't make you intelligent. It doesn't make you rational. It's not the atheism that really matters. The atheism grows out of the skepticism. It's the skepticism that actually gets you there. Do you think atheists should actively advocate for atheism? Well, I think people should openly and actively advocate for rationality. People should be skeptics. Atheism is just the logical outcome of exercising that skepticism in the religious sphere. Of course, it seems obvious that whoever the hell wrote these questions had no idea what any of these words actually meant, so I guess you can probably take that how you want. What do you think are the main obstacles to atheism being more widely accepted? See my above answer. It's already being widely accepted. In another couple of decades, we'll be asking that about religion. According to Pew Research, by 2070, Christianity will likely be in the minority and atheism will be in the majority. And I don't even know that it's going to take that long. And I say that as somebody who is absolutely amazed at the advances that atheism has made. Back in 2007, it looked like it was going to take forever. Now, it looks like it's going to happen tomorrow. Now, religion is in a tailspin. Churches are closing in droves. Church attendance dropped below 50%, and it's still falling. Barna actually did a research project very recently, I think it was this year, where they found that only 68% of people interviewed claimed to be Christian. Only about 38% of people, I'm just going by memory on these numbers, so don't sue me, but only about 38% of people actually attended church, and only about 33% actually read the Bible. So religion ain't doing so hot, people. It's not that hard to see. Where I live now, there are only 3 actual physical standalone Christian churches within a reasonable driving distance. That's it. Just 3. There's a couple more in strip malls, but that's a far cry from them being on every street corner like they were in the place I used to live. But I noted back then that those were going out of business like crazy. These things are dying. I can't tell you the last time that I ran into anyone openly preaching on the street. I mean, it's been years and years and years, and I live in a very conservative area. Nobody talks about religion. Nobody goes door to door. It's just dead. And that's a great thing. Do you think that atheism will eventually become the dominant worldview? You're not keeping up, are you? Now, granted, as I said, I don't know when this was made, but as of today, 2023, you're way out of date. In a lot of places around the world, it already is the dominant worldview. Pew Research estimates that if things continue as they have been in the US by 2070, non-religion will have surpassed religion in terms of popularity. If you look at 2017 Gallup polling, Australia is already 63% non-religious. Austria is 53%. Azerbaijan is 64%. Belgium, also 64%. Canada, 57%. China, 90%. The Czech Republic, 72%. Denmark, 61%. Estonia, 60%. Finland, 55%. Germany, 60%. Ireland, 56%. Israel, and I think this is kind of surprising, 58% secular. Japan, 60%. Norway, 62%. Slovenia, 53%. South Korea, 60%. Spain, 57%. Sweden, 73%. The UK, 69%. And Vietnam, 63%. That's a whole lot of places that don't have a whole lot of use for religion, isn't it? The US is rapidly catching up. We were at 39% back in 2017, And we're certainly a hell of a lot higher than that now. Most of the places where religion is still in the majority, those places tend to be third world and developing countries, and as they develop, they're going to leave religion behind too. It really is a great time to be alive, isn't it? What do you think is the most important thing atheists can do to improve their public image? Who cares? This isn't a popularity contest. Do you think we're trying to impress the religiously delusional? If so, we shouldn't be. We should just be the best people that we can be. We should be the most rational people we should be. And we shouldn't believe stupid shit. Again, this is about skepticism, not falling for the mindless garbage that so many people fall for. It's not about making other people happy. It's not about stroking their childish egos. It's about making all of humanity smarter. And I think that's a pretty good goal. What do you think is the best way to argue with someone religious? Well, normally I would say with the facts. Sadly, though, most religious people just don't care. You're probably pretty safe with the barely religious, the liberal and moderate theists, because that's what the things like street epistemology will work on. Those are the people who are willing to honestly question their own preconceptions and are more likely to change their minds when they realize that they're wrong. For the fundamentalist, though, it's pretty much a lost cause. I was just having this discussion with an atheist who thought that you could just go after fundamentalists and change their minds. After all, some fundamentalists have lost their faith before, so it's got to be possible. Yeah, sorry, it's not. You can't change anyone else's mind against their will. They could decide on their own that they cared more about the facts than about their faith. I mean, I did that myself. But for as much as I was ever a real fundamentalist, that has to come from within. It can't be imposed from the outside. You can't logically argue someone out of a position that they never logically argued themselves into in the first place. I mean, if you want to go and do that, you're perfectly welcome to do so, but I wouldn't be getting my hopes up of being very successful. It's kind of like the stands against reason people. They make a lot of excuses for why they fail, because they're almost always going to fail. These are not rational people. These are fanatics, and fanatics are almost impossible to deconvert through reason. Is there anything else you'd like to add about atheism or your experiences as an atheist? Not really. I mean, I guess if this was a real face-to-face discussion, then yeah, maybe, but this isn't. This is just on a website. It's just some guy online answering a bunch of questions. So from here on down, this is probably going to be pretty quick because most of it is conversational and it really just doesn't apply to what we're doing here. So let's kind of wrap this up. What should I do if I want to learn more about atheism? Well, there's nothing to learn about atheism because, as I keep saying, atheism isn't a thing. It's a lack of a thing. We just don't believe your entirely unsupported claims. I mean, there are a bunch of books about the subject if you really want to go read them, but most of them are just criticizing religion, not explaining atheism, because, as I said, there's really nothing to explain. The concept is very, very simple. We just don't believe you. Can you recommend any good books or resources on atheism? I think I just addressed that, didn't I? So instead of just skipping the question or whatever, I wanted to take this opportunity to say that I see an awful lot of people out there, atheist channels on YouTube and the like, that are really giving religion too much rope. I was thinking about this earlier today after I watched a video that addressed biblical claims as if the Bible was actually worthwhile. Now, of course, any content creator can do whatever they want to do. I'm not being critical of that. But many, maybe even most, YouTube atheist channels simply grant all of the initial preconceptions of the religious. There is a God. The Bible is the word of that God. They are only addressing how people interpret the Bible, things like that. Well, who cares about that? For me, the entire question about religion begins and ends with the existence of their gods. If you can't prove that, then nothing else matters. Discussion over because you haven't managed to get to step one. What's the point of talking about a book of ancient mythology if you haven't established the God that it discusses in the first place? I just don't get it. I figure they're just looking to increase their chances for engagement, but debating the Bible without proving God is like debating the truth of Star Trek canon without establishing that Captain Kirk exists. You need to start at square one, and the religious refuse to do that. Do you have any questions for me about my beliefs? No, because you're not here. What difference would it make? It's not like you can answer me. This is, as a lot of other questionnaires that we've seen online, intended for believers to have a face-to-face interaction with an atheist. And as such, I do understand the limitations of this format and acknowledge that some of these questions are less than useful doing it as we are. If you were here, then my questions would be on you proving your God was real, something that I think we all know wouldn't go anywhere. So I don't see the point in pursuing it at all. So there we go. That's 56 questions down, and to be honest, I do think some of them were interesting. A lot were based on a very poor understanding of reality, which I figure a lot of us have come to expect. Why these people can't just do a simple Google search, I just don't know. But I think that is pretty par for the course. What do you all think about this? Let me know in the comments. I honestly do like doing question videos, so long as the questions aren't painfully stupid and ignorant, which sadly I think we all know a lot of them are. It's really hard to find questions that aren't really intended for an already religious audience, where they're just saying, well, here's a question for an atheist. Fill in your own answer. Yeah, that's really, really common. We run into that a lot. They don't care if atheists answer or if atheists even see the questions. They exist solely so their religious audience can fill in all the gaps with made-up answers, and they can all get a good laugh over the things they just invented in their heads. I don't really get that impression from this list, which I think is good. These aren't gotcha questions. They weren't overtly trying to put one over on atheists like things from Braxton Hunter or Matt Slick or people like that clearly do. If my answers help somebody, I'm glad. That's what I'm here to do after all. So if you have any additional questions for me, go ahead and post them down in the comments and I'll give them a look. That's kind of what we do around here after all. We have conversations. Sadly, the religious aren't very good at that. So until next time, take care and be rational. Somebody out there has to be.